The air in Washington, D.C. felt heavier than usual, a mixture of humid fall weather and political tension that never seemed to sleep. The sun was just beginning to rise over the Potomac River as Senator Bernie Sanders prepared his morning briefing. His staff moved briskly around him, placing folders, tablets, and updated reports on his desk. But Bernie hardly needed notes today. He already knew what he was going to say. He had been waiting for this moment. News broke late last night that President Donald Trump had hosted Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman at the White House, an unannounced visit that immediately sent the media into a frenzy. Trump had described the meeting as productive, necessary, and excellent for American interests. For Bernie Sanders, however, it was a red flag. "This is outrageous," Bernie muttered to himself as he skimmed through the early headlines. Another embrace of authoritarianism, another example of Trump's reckless foreign policy. His jaw tightened. He had criticized Saudi Arabia for years, its role in Yemen, its human rights abuses, the murder of journalist Jamal Khashoggi, and now Trump was rolling out the red carpet for its crown prince without even notifying congressional leaders? Not on his watch. By 10 a.m., Bernie stepped into a crowded hallway on Capitol Hill as cameras swarmed him like bees. The press conference had drawn more reporters than he expected. A journalist shouted, "Senator Sanders, do you believe the president's meeting was inappropriate?" Bernie stopped, stared straight into the cameras, and with the passion that had fueled 2 presidential campaigns, declared, "Yes, not only was it inappropriate, it was dangerous. President Trump once again shows he has no regard for human rights, for democratic values, or for the responsibilities of his office. The Saudi crown prince has a horrific record, and for Trump to meet with him in secrecy is unacceptable for a president of the United States." Flashes erupted. Reporters leaned forward. Bernie continued, growing more fiery with every sentence. "This administration continues to put profit, oil, and personal political interest above morality, above justice, above the American people. President Trump cannot continue to cozy up to foreign leaders who abuse power while ignoring Congress and the Constitution." By the time he finished, CNN, MSNBC, ABC, CBS, and even international outlets had already begun running the clip on loop. Social media exploded. Hashtags like Bernie versus Trump, Saudi scandal, and authoritarian allies dominated the trending page. On the other side of the city, the White House felt the tremor instantly. Inside the Oval Office, President Donald Trump sat reclined in the chair behind the resolute desk, scrolling through his phone. His advisors stood around quietly, unsure of what his reaction might be. Trump was unpredictable, sharp-tongued, and fiery, especially when someone tried to embarrass him. "Look at this," Trump said, holding up his phone. "Bernie is losing his mind again. Every time I do something good for America, the guy starts yelling." His staff exchanged nervous looks. Then Trump added, almost amused, "Calls me cozy with foreign leaders. You believe that? The guy spent half his career praising socialism, and he's lecturing me about democracy?" He shook his head, unimpressed, but not angry. If anything, he looked energized. "Sir," an advisor finally said, "the media is amplifying his comments. Democrats are already calling for hearings. They're demanding you release details about the meeting." Trump smirked. "Good. Let them demand. I'll handle Bernie. I always do." He put his phone down and stood, buttoning his suit jacket. "Set up a press conference for tomorrow morning, East Room. I'm going to clear the air and maybe embarrass crazy Bernie a little while I'm at it." Outside, the media continued intensifying the narrative. Pundits described Bernie's remarks as a direct challenge, a bold attack, and possibly the beginning of a new political storm. But what none of them knew, not yet, was that Trump was preparing something that would flip the entire conversation upside down. Because the Saudi crown prince's visit, it wasn't what anyone thought it was. And Trump was about to reveal something that would make Bernie Sanders regret every word he said. The next morning, the East Room of the White House buzzed with anticipation. Reporters flooded the space, their voices echoing beneath the grand chandeliers. Something about today felt different. Trump wasn't usually this eager to hold a press conference unless he had something big to say. Camera crews adjusted their tripods, producers whispered into earpieces, microphones were tested frantically. "Stand by, POTUS in 30 seconds. Behind the double doors, Donald Trump stood calmly, with a confidence that bordered on theatrical. Stephen Miller straightened his tie. Communications Director Caroline Levitt gave him a quick rundown. Sir, Sanders' comments have dominated the news cycle for almost 16 hours. The press expects you to fight back hard, probably something about transparency, foreign policy, and democratic values. Trump cut her off. I know what they expect, he said with a grin, which is exactly why I'm going to say something they don't expect. Caroline nodded, intrigued. The doors opened. Flashbulbs lit up the room as Trump stepped forward, his expression bold and unwavering. He approached the podium, placed both hands on the sides, and looked at the sea of cameras in front of him. Good morning, he began, his voice steady. I'm here today to address the absolute hysteria created by Senator Bernie Sanders and certain media networks regarding my meeting yesterday with Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. The room leaned in. Trump continued with a half smile. Bernie said I cozy up to authoritarian leaders. He says the meeting was secretive, dangerous, and irresponsible. Well, let me tell you what's actually going on. He paused, long enough for the moment to breathe. First, Trump said firmly, the meeting was not secret. It was classified. Classified because it involved negotiations that, if exposed prematurely, could jeopardize American lives and national security. A ripple of surprise swept through the reporters. Trump pressed on. Second, this meeting wasn't about oil, it wasn't about arms, it wasn't about profit. It was about something Bernie Sanders didn't bother asking about: ending a covert terror financing network that has been funneling money into extremist groups across the Middle East and Africa. The room fell dead silent. Trump continued, each sentence more explosive than the last. For months, Saudi intelligence has been working with us, yes, with us, to dismantle an operation involving rogue actors inside Iran, Syria, and even parts of Europe. The Crown Prince came to the White House to finalize joint operations that could dismantle multiple dangerous cells within weeks. An NBC reporter gasped quietly. Another scribbled furiously. Trump wasn't finished. And here's the part Senator Sanders really won't like, Trump added with a smirk. While he was busy accusing me of supporting dictators, the Crown Prince and I discussed an historic multilateral agreement that would put unprecedented pressure on militant regimes, including those responsible for killing American soldiers. The crowd erupted with murmurs. Trump leaned closer to the microphone. So, to Bernie Sanders, maybe next time you decide to attack the President of the United States, how about you ask what actually happened instead of jumping to conclusions, wrong conclusions, because you're looking for headlines? Then, Trump delivered the punch. And let me be very clear. If Senator Sanders had his way, this operation would have been exposed, compromised, and American intelligence officers overseas would be in danger today. That's the difference between leadership and political theater. A stunned silence washed over the room. Then came the flood of shouted questions. Mr. President, can you provide evidence? Are there documents? Was Congress briefed? But Trump raised a hand. Evidence will be released at the appropriate time. What I can say is this: America is safer today because of this meeting. And some people owe the country an apology. He didn't have to say Bernie's name again. Everyone got the message. Trump ended the press conference abruptly and walked out, leaving the media scrambling for interpretation. Cable networks immediately cut into programming. Breaking: Trump claims Saudi meeting was anti-terror operation. Bernie's criticism backfires. New information suggests high-level security collaboration. Back on Capitol Hill, Bernie Sanders watched the live broadcast in disbelief. He sat stiffly, arms folded, jaw clenched. His staff shifted nervously beside him. "Senator," one-eighth whispered, this doesn't look good." Bernie didn't respond. He didn't need to. He knew the truth. Trump had flipped the narrative completely. And if he didn't respond strategically, this could be one of the worst political miscalculations of his career.
Bernie Sanders sat frozen in his office, the muted sound of reporters on the television echoing in the background. The broadcast replayed Trump's press conference on a continuous loop, each pass landing like a punch Bernie hadn't seen coming. This is absurd," Bernie finally muttered. "He's turning it around. He's turning the whole thing around. His senior advisor, Maya, spoke cautiously. Senator, the president just presented this as a counter-terror breakthrough. If what he said is true— Bernie cut her off sharply. If what he said is true, you think Trump, the biggest showman in American politics, is telling the whole truth? Maya lowered her eyes. I'm saying the optics are bad. Really bad. Across social media, the landscape mutated by the hour. Where the previous night's trending topics condemned Trump, the new wave seemed shockingly favorable to the president. Hashtag Trump protects America. Hashtag Bernie blunder. Hashtag Saudi intel deal. Cable news panels hosted emergency discussions, security experts speculated cautiously, and conservative commentators were already calling Bernie's earlier remarks reckless, uninformed, and embarrassing. But the real hit came when Fox News began airing sharp commentary. Bernie Sanders didn't just jump the gun, he shot himself in the foot. And CNN, usually more sympathetic to Bernie, was forced into a neutral, fact-finding stance. If the president's claims are accurate, this represents a serious miscalculation by Senator Sanders. Bernie's frustration boiled. He stood up abruptly and paced the room. I am not going to be painted as irresponsible. I am not going to let Donald Trump rewrite reality. We need the truth, and we need it now. Maya hesitated, choosing her words carefully. Senator, respectfully, you came out swinging before you had any information. The public sees that. Trump is exploiting that. Bernie stopped pacing. His eyebrows furrowed deeply. Call a press conference, right now. But Maya didn't move. Senator, with all due respect, maybe we should wait until we have more information. If you go out there now without anything to counter Trump's statement, he'll win the narrative completely. The room went silent. Bernie stared at her, breathing heavily. For the first time in a long while, someone on his team had said exactly what he didn't want to hear. Down the hall, another aide burst in without knocking. Senator, the president just released a partial transcript and a redacted briefing summary. Bernie rushed over as Maya pulled the document up on the office TV. The headline appeared in bold white letters. White House releases preliminary details of joint counter-terror operation. The document wasn't fully transparent. Sections were blacked out, but it contained enough substance to sway public opinion. It referenced a covert financial network tied to extremist groups, joint intelligence efforts between the U.S. and Saudi Arabia, pending operations scheduled for the coming weeks. Bernie's face tightened. He felt the weight of the moment. If this was legitimate, and it was convincing enough, it meant Trump had just executed one of the most effective political reversals in years. And Bernie was the target. His staff looked at him, waiting. Bernie took a deep breath. Fine, he said quietly. We respond, but not defensively. We demand transparency. We demand accountability. We push for congressional oversight, and we frame it as protecting democracy. Maya nodded, relieved. That's the right move, Senator. But Bernie wasn't entirely reassured. He knew Trump wouldn't stop here. Trump loved the spotlight, loved confrontation. He would escalate this. He always did. And right on cue, Trump's next move arrived like a lightning strike. A breaking news alert flashed. Bernie exhaled slowly. Oh, great, he muttered. He's going to turn this into a circus. For Trump, this wasn't just politics. This was entertainment. And he knew America would tune in. Meanwhile, Bernie had a hard fact to face. He attacked Trump without the full picture. And now, Trump was about to go on national television to bury him with the rest of it. Night settled over America with the kind of intensity only a major political moment could create. Screens flickered on in living rooms from Florida to Alaska. News networks cleared their schedules. The White House had announced President Donald Trump's primetime address just 7 hours earlier, but that was enough to send ratings projections soaring. Even people who didn't like Trump tuned in, if only to see what he would say next. After all, Trump rarely passed on an opportunity to turn politics into a national spectacle. In the Senate office building, Bernie Sanders watched from a conference room surrounded by aides. The atmosphere felt like the tense calm before a storm. "Senator," Maya said softly, "no matter what he says tonight, we respond tomorrow with measured clarity. No emotion, no anger, just facts." Bernie nodded, though his jaw remained clenched. "I just hope he doesn't go too far." The television cut to a crisp shot of the White House residence. Trump sat in an elegant armchair, the American flag behind him. His posture was steady, confident, almost presidential in the old-fashioned sense. "Good evening," Trump began, his voice serious, controlled. "I'm speaking to you tonight because important things were said about me, about your government, and about America's national security, and you deserve the truth." Bernie leaned forward, bracing himself. Trump continued, "Yesterday, Senator Bernie Sanders accused me of supporting an authoritarian regime because I met with the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia. He called the meeting dangerous, reckless, and irresponsible." He paused. "And normally I'd ignore the political noise, but this time the American people need clarity." Trump lifted a document from the table beside him. "For the last 6 months, American intelligence has been tracking a clandestine financial network, one that funneled resources into extremist groups responsible for destabilizing regions and targeting U.S. interests. Saudi intelligence uncovered the initial trail. Together, we planned operations to shut it down." Footage on screen shifted to blurred, redacted intelligence memos, satellite images, and diagrams of financial flows. Enough to appear credible, enough to impress viewers. Trump went on. "The Crown Prince came to the White House to finalize plans for coordinated strikes against the central nodes of this network. The mission, scheduled to begin next week, would protect American lives around the world." Bernie felt the room deflate around him. Trump wasn't just pushing back, he was rewriting the entire narrative with cinematic precision. Then came the blow Bernie feared. And when Senator Bernie Sanders attacked the integrity of this operation without knowing a single fact, he jeopardized something very sensitive, something very important. Bernie inhaled sharply. Trump continued, "When a U.S. senator speaks without understanding the classified situation, foreign intelligence partners may perceive instability. They may pull back. And when they pull back, American operatives lose support, lose intel, or worse, lose their lives." Bernie slammed his hand on the table. "This is outrageous," he growled. Maya put her hand on his shoulder. "Senator, he's baiting you. Stay calm." On screen, Trump's tone softened, but not kindly, more like a teacher chiding a student. "I understand Senator Bernie Sanders cares about human rights. I respect that, I do. But leadership requires responsibility, discipline, the willingness to gather facts before shouting into microphones." Then Trump delivered the final strike. "So tonight, I am calling for a bipartisan congressional briefing. I will open the doors. I will provide the details to the proper committees. I have nothing to hide. But I hope Senator Bernie Sanders will reflect on the fact that national security comes before political attacks." The broadcast ended abruptly. No press questions, only silence. America was buzzing within seconds. On social media, Trump destroys Sanders with receipts. Bernie jumped too soon. Embarrassing. Primetime Trump wins again. In the conference room, Bernie stood up slowly, anger mixing with disbelief. He turned a national security briefing into a reality TV episode, and people are just eating it up. Maya spoke gently. "This is what he does better than anyone. He controls the message, he controls the stage, and tonight, he controlled the country." Bernie paced the room, breathing heavily. "We're not done," he said finally. "He thinks he ended this. He didn't. If he wants a bipartisan briefing, fine, we'll be there, and I'll ask every question he won't want to answer." Maya nodded, relieved. "That's the right move, Senator." But Bernie wasn't entirely reassured. He knew Trump wouldn't stop here. Trump had taken the narrative, twisted it, and weaponized it. And unless Bernie found a way to regain ground quickly, this controversy might stick to him like glue. The next morning, Washington woke up buzzing like a hive struck by a stick. Trump's primetime address dominated every conversation, every headline, every political podcast. And for the first time in a while, Bernie Sanders felt the weight of public opinion leaning firmly against him. At 9 a.m., the Senate Intelligence Committee.
The next morning, Washington woke up buzzing like a hive struck by a stick. Trump's primetime address dominated every conversation, every headline, every political podcast. And for the first time in a while, Bernie Sanders felt the weight of public opinion leaning firmly against him. At 9 a.m., the Senate Intelligence Committee convened in a closed-door session. Members from both parties shuffled into the secure room, leaving their phones in lockers outside. Bernie walked in calmly, though his staff could tell the pressure simmered beneath the surface. Trump had requested this meeting, and Trump rarely requested anything without a plan. Inside, Director of National Intelligence, Rebecca Fuller, a sharp, composed woman with a reputation for neutrality, stood alongside representatives from the CIA, NSA, and the Department of Defense. Declassified documents rested neatly on the table. Bernie took a seat. Across the room, Republican senators eyed him with a mix of curiosity and mild amusement. Some smiled cephally, as if they already knew Bernie was about to regret stepping into the ring with Trump. "Let's begin," Senator Marco Ruiz, the committee chair, said. Rebecca Fuller stepped forward. "Ladies and gentlemen, today we will review the intelligence relevant to the president's recent meeting with the Saudi Crown Prince." She clicked a remote. A screen lit up with maps, financial networks, intercepted communications. Her tone remained professional, strict, unquestionable. "These are the terror-linked financial channels the president referenced yesterday. As you can see, they trace back to multiple regions across the Middle East. Over the last year, Saudi intelligence has provided us with crucial access, enabling us to confirm identities, laundering routes, and operational plans." She switched slides. "These efforts have already prevented 2 attacks on U.S. diplomats, and next week's operation, if carried out, would disrupt the largest financing network uncovered in the last decade." Bernie frowned. This was serious. Too serious. "Director Fuller," Bernie said, raising a hand, "are you confirming that the president's statement from last night is accurate?" Fuller nodded once firmly. "Yes, Senator. Factually accurate." A ripple of whispers spread across the room. Bernie leaned back slowly. He had expected Trump's version to be exaggerated, overblown, maybe even fabricated. But this was real. Still, Bernie refused to fold. "Why was Congress not notified earlier?" he challenged. "This is a major intelligence operation." "Senator," Fuller replied, "we follow protocol. Sensitive foreign to U.S. intel transfers require strict confidentiality. Only the president, select military officials, and a small number of agency heads were briefed." Bernie pressed further. "Do you believe there was a risk in holding a meeting with the Crown Prince at the White House without notifying congressional leadership?" Fuller paused, then answered carefully. "Senator, the risk was minimal. Secrecy was necessary. Had this information leaked, ongoing operations could have failed." Behind her, the CIA director added, "Leaks are at an all-time high on Capitol Hill. We risk losing partners if they fear political blowback." Several senators turned towards Bernie subtly. The message was clear. Trump wasn't the liability here. Bernie's public outburst was. For the first time, Bernie felt heat rising to his face. Not anger, but something he rarely experienced in Washington. Embarrassment. Ruiz finally spoke. "Senator Sanders, would you care to comment?" Bernie cleared his throat. "Look, my concern has always been human rights and democratic accountability. I stand by that. But I did not have access to this information. Knowing what I know now, I believe it is essential that the administration works to communicate with Congress more effectively." A diplomatic answer. Reasonable, measured. But everyone in the room heard the subtext. Trump won this round. The hearing ended. Senators filed out. Bernie stayed behind a moment, staring at the now black screen. Maya approached gently. "Senator, it could have gone worse." Bernie sighed. "He outmaneuvered me. Again."
Outside reporters swarmed him immediately. "Senator Sanders, did the president mislead the country? Do you still stand by your criticism? Did you overreact?" Bernie lifted his chin, prepared to salvage what he could. "Let me be clear," he said firmly. "I care deeply about America's foreign policy and the values we stand for. I asked the questions that I believed needed to be asked. But yes, new information was presented today. Information I did not have. I believe all of us must remain vigilant and ensure transparency even during classified operations." The press scribbled eagerly, but the story of the day belonged elsewhere. At the White House, Trump strode past reporters with a grin. "Bernie's a good guy," he said casually, "but he jumped too fast. Happens. I'll send him a copy of the briefing notes. Maybe he'll read them this time." Laughter erupted, and with that, Trump moved on, already enjoying another political victory. Meanwhile, Bernie Sanders walked back towards his office, the cameras following him like shadows. He knew Washington would eventually forget this moment, but he wouldn't. Because this time, Trump didn't just push back. He made Bernie Sanders regret everything.